Hey everybody, Ben here for the Bonehead podcast, and welcome to Blood Bowl 7's rosters, Khorne. So we're going back through every team in Blood Bowl 2020 and updating the 7's rosters with the rules from the Deathzone 2021 version. A few things changed in that version, including some of the inducements, so it makes a good idea to go back through and see just what effect that has on some of the rosters. Now, Khorne only dropped after Deathzone 2021, but there is a few things that we get to touch on, especially as we're running Khorne in 7 Super Series at the moment as well. Anyway, let's have a look at the Khorne team and some of the best and most fun 7's rosters. Okay, so Khorne, why would you want to run them in 7s and why wouldn't you? So Blood Bowl 7s is a much better way of playing 7s in my opinion. It's my favourite way of playing 7s. It is 45 minutes for a feeling of Blood Bowl, and it's just my favourite way to play. Is it better? It's probably not better, but I do enjoy it a lot, and Khorne works so good in 7s. Now, strengths, they have many, and the top ones here, the Bloodseekers, they're just up there in my favourite positionals, I think. Movement 5 is not the fastest thing in the world, Edge 4 Plus is not the most agile thing in the world. But Strength 4, Frenzy, when they've got Armour 10 plus as well, they are just massively heavy hitters. And on a Blood Bowl 7's pitch, Strength 4 is going to beat most of your targets. Frenzy is going to mean that you get 2 goes at it, and every bit of removal in Blood Bowl 7's is almost twice as impactful as a full game of Blood Bowl. So those Bloodseekers being able to just pile on the punches while being reasonably fast and reasonably reliable, it can cause absolute carnage, or cornage, as I should say. There's also Khorne Gores. Now, everything on this roster has got Frenzy apart from the Khorne Gores. Movement 6, Edge 3 plus means that they're pretty good. They're pretty standard agility, pretty standard speed. They've got a great combination of skills, though, in Juggernaut and Horns, which means when that ball carrier of yours needs to break out, you can take a 3 plus dodge into the open, sure, or you can blitz, Horns, 2 dice with Jugs. You've basically got a 1 in 36 chance of it going wrong at that point. So it makes them really reliable and quite an effective way to kind of push a target away and then carry on moving round. And you've also got a Bloodspawn, which has to be one of the most terrifying big guys on the Blood Bowl pitch at the moment. Now, Mighty Blow and Claw don't combo the way they used to, but an 8 plus to break armor followed by a 7 plus to KO a guy, normally, is pretty monstrous, and it is pretty fearsome, and everything we just talked about with removal being even more impactful in 7s, the Bloodspawn with movement 5 and strength 5 and frenzy and mighty blow and claw can be an absolute, it can be the destroyer of worlds on the pitch. So this team has got so much potential for just maiming, burning and killing. It makes a lot of sense. Now, the downsides of it, you've got no core skills at all, and Blood Bowl 7's is a place where you're not likely to get access to very many skills. Whether you're playing League with random skills, doesn't really matter what you want at that point, does it? Or in a tournament or an expansion system like 7 Super Series, you're not going to get very many skills. 2, maybe 3, and it's going to be tough to pick. So starting out with no block and no dodge and no sure hands does hurt the roster. You are absolutely at the mercy of the dice at that point. But you are running a frenzy-heavy roster. You're at the mercy of the dice anyway, so just play into it and just love the carnage. And Frenzy. Frenzy is a double-edged sword, in that you get to throw loads of block dice and follow up and throw loads more. It also means you don't get to choose not to follow up, and you don't get to choose not to throw bad block dice. So you have to sequence everything perfectly, and you've got to be really careful to stay away from the edges, because there is nothing a team loves more than to surf a frenzy-heavy team. It's just a massive bit of justice on the Blood Bowl pitch. Okay, so we've got a great suggestion with these videos, and we're going to start pulling the skills here before we go into the rosters. So Khorne skills, we've just talked about it. In a league situation, it's random, so, you know, good luck. In a tournament situation, these guys are tier 2, so you may get 3 skills for a 7s tournament. So you are going to have a little bit of flexibility, but not a ton. So the Bloodspawn absolutely shines if you can spend a double/secondary skill on him and give him block. This guy is going to be throwing block dice as often as he can, and the more effective those block dice are, the better for you. Now, you don't really have a lot of rerolls in this roster, so if it goes wrong, it goes wrong, and because this guy is big and frenzied, you want to kind of make him as reliable as possible. So block pays dividends. Pro is also a really useful skill for the Bloodspawn. You get to re-roll his very angry roll, and also you get every now and again to just, when he rolls a double push, you can try and pro one of those on a 3+ to just give you a shot at that 3-die, 4-die block to get you that extra opportunity to make the most of Mighty Blow and Claw. So actually pro just makes him even more effective. If you don't have access to a secondary skill, then Juggernaut is a brilliant skill for the Bloodspawn. Yeah, you will occasionally want to use your Blitz on another player because your Seeker's got a better opportunity, perhaps a Surf, or your Khorne needs to use that Blitz to give his Horn Strength 4 for an opportunistic block. But the rest of the time, that Bloodspawn is going to be just rampaging around, burning and maiming things like we said before, and actually the opportunity for him to run in there and turn a failed block into a push and then a follow-up block is a really huge one. Now guard's going to be really effective for him as well. He is a big dude, he's going to be in the mosh pit, and his guard is going to allow your marauders who are buddying up with him to be strength 4 basically, and then you kind of just cheat your way into having more Bloodseekers on the pitch. Stand Firm is obviously going to be really useful for a frenzy heavy roster as well. Your Bloodspawn is going to just find a way to turn the Blood Bowl pitch into a 2p machine. It's just going to start one side and filter everything down. So being on the edge and not being able to be counter-surfed is phenomenally useful. So there's a ton of great skills for the Bloodspawn. The Bloodseekers can play the role of a mini Bloodspawn because when you're strength 4, if you're hitting a strength 3 player, you might as well be strength 5 because you are getting those 2-die followed by 2-die blocks. So the Bloodseekers also benefit from most of the skills we just talked around. Block makes them super kind of effective. Tell we've been playing Pokemon in my household. No, it makes them reliable. It's good for defense, it's good for offense. It's going to just take down your opponent the more opportunity you get. Guard, again, everything we just said is appropriate. Now you can get a little bit bloodthirsty with this roster and go for Mighty Blow on the Bloodseekers as well. Strength 4 means they are going to be throwing a lot of block dice, and every time you can get one of those pals to stick, it is more effective. Block is going to allow them to be more consistent. That's the word I was looking for earlier. More consistent. Mighty Blow is going to mean that they get more casualties and more removal. So it's a really tough line to kind of balance. But the Bloodseekers are an excellent candidate for tackle because in 7s, dodge, block, and sure hands are the best 3 skills. Someone on your opponent's team is going to find a way to get a cheeky bit of dodge. Either they've got it in their roster or it's one of the skills they take. And having a strength 4, movement 5 tackle piece in the backfield means that you are going to be able to basically throw 4 dice against that scoring threat. That is a huge, hard counter. You can put tackle on a marauder for that extra bit of speed, but that strength does not need support. Basically, you're a movement 5 Wilhelm Chaney in the backfield, and that's a great place to be. Khorne block, sure hands, because they're going to be kind of the ball carrier, kind of the reliable player piece. But if you get access to a double, then sneaking leader onto one of these guys to give you a reroll in the roster is going to be really useful. And on the Marauders themselves, they're great players. Moving 6, Edge 3+, means they're the great human linemen. They've got Frenzy, sure, and they're a little bit light on armor, sure, which means eventually they're going to block themselves into oblivion. That's okay, they're going to take an opponent with you. Getting block makes them more consistent. Giving them sure hands, if you don't have a Khorne on your roster, is fine. 3+ with a reroll is good to go. It's a great place to have it, and kick is a brilliant skill on any 7s roster, especially this one here. You can drop it close, and all it's going to do is force your opponent to creep towards your line and give you first attack, or you pin them back and just really apply that pressure and just kind of frenzy your way in there. Pricey rerolls at 120k means that you're not going to get rerolls into the roster very often, so it kind of makes that leader on Khorne very effective if that's what you want to do, or you just do Khorne things and lean into making as many violent blocks as possible. Okay, let's start looking at some of these rosters. So we've got the 1-2-1 mix here, which is really the best starting point for the roster. You get the Bloodspawn, who is a massive impact on the pitch. He's not the fastest at movement 5, but he is potent at strength 5, and with all of those kind of delete skills, he's very effective. He will force your opponent to play around him, and with movement 5, actually, that's the majority of the pitch covered, so there's not going to be a safe place for your opponent to hide from the Bloodspawn, and the Bloodspawn is going to be able to consistently get 2-die blocks on anything, and like I said, Mighty Blow Claw, it's going to come up every now and again, and it's just going to force that extra stun to take out a player, just that extra bit of casualty. It is a really terrifying thing. Now, the lack of horns on that guy means that he's not going to win kaiju combats without some support. He's not a Minotaur. You can't just send him off on his own, but he will do a more... Basically, if you can get him into a mosh pit, he is going to wreck your opponents. And then he's backed up by 2 Bloodseekers in this roster, who at strength 4 are going to be blocking almost as effectively as that Bloodspawn as well. So you end up with 3 heavy hitters, 1 just a really heavy hitter, and 2 kind of medium heavy hitters, which is a lot of heavy hitters for a game where you can only have 7 players on the pitch. Now, your 4th player is one of those Khorne Gores, movement 6, edge 3+. He's going to be your kind of primary ball carrier in this roster, and you've got 3 Marauders to back up. So the strength of this roster is obviously the strength of this roster. 2 strength 4 frenzy pieces and a strength 5 frenzy piece. The vulnerability of this roster is you have only got 7 players, and everybody apart from the Khorne Gore has got frenzy with no block. So there is a high likelihood that 1 or 2 of your players will end up just rolling into a both down skull every now and again, and it is going to give them the chance to be just murdered by the ground at that point. Marauders are vulnerable to that, and you could end up playing a second drive, the second half, with only 6 players. That is going to play against your strength advantage, but if you can make your blocks as effective as possible and go into the second half with your opponent at 6 players, they have got no chance. Now, a slight tweak on that is the 3-1 mix. Now, this is the one we ran with in 7 Super Series. You got 3 Bloodseekers, 1 Khorne Gore, 3 Marauders for 7 players. Now, that brings you in at 550, which gives you a choice at your kind of top-up purchase here. Now, we've downgraded, basically, the Strength 5 guy into a Strength 4 guy. Now, you've still got a ton of strength here. You don't have the ability to go toe-to-toe with other big guys, but against medium blockers, blitzers, and most of the crew on most teams, you're still going to be able to pound a face. But the thing you get out of this roster, and this is why we ran it in 7 Super Series, is that extra 50k, which is going to give you a pretty big choice to make. You can take the 8th Marauder, and I cannot stress how effective that has been when we've seen this roster on the pitch. Losing a guy is almost a certainty when you're running the Khorne roster. Your armor's not the highest, and you are going to take yourself out every now and again as well. So your opponent's going to be doing its best to take out your players, and you're going to be doing a little bit of that too, which means you do end up losing 1 or 2 guys to a KO box. Having a guy backing your roster up means that you can do that. You can take a foul when you need to, and you've got that extra player. So the 550 here, spending that extra 50k you've got left over to take the 8th player, is going to be really effective. And this makes it a really potent list for tournament and for league as well. That extra bit of just sustained damage against your team is going to mean that you can keep your players there. The Bloodseekers are good to go. They're tough guys. The Khorne Gores are okay. It's your linemen that are vulnerable, and having a spare one there is going to keep your team functioning with 7 players. Going into the second drive or second half, you should have removed one of their players, and you can kind of start collapsing numbers against your opponent if you've got some in reserve yourself. Now, the alternative, and I do like this, and this is why the 3-1 mix gets you that bit of flex, is you can take a desperate measure most of the time, and that can give you a massive edge. There's some good rolls on the desperate measure chart for 7s, and there's some fine rolls. You can have multiple fouls, you can have +1 strength, you can have a wizard. There's a ton of great opportunities. Consistency wise, taking the 4th Marauder, the 8th player, is the best way to go. But if you want to have a little fun, dropping the 8th player for a desperate measure, it can be very entertaining. Or, if you aren't that fussed about the ball in any way, shape or form, you can go max Seeker build. So what we've done here is we've taken the maximum amount of Bloodseekers and then 3 Marauders. So 4 Seekers, 3 Marauders. You've only got 3 Edge 3+ players. Everybody on this roster's got Frenzy. You've got no rerolls, but what you do have is 4 Strength, 4 Frenzy pieces. Now, this has a little bit less flexibility than the 3-1 build, But dude, you are going to be piling those block dice in, and this is terrifying. For a 7's defense, 4 Seekers with 3 Marauders is just horrific. There is no roster in 7's that's like, right, okay, I can score through that without taking any damage. You put your 3 Marauders on your line, you go Chevron-style defense with the Bloodseekers a couple squares behind. Your opponent cannot reach them to blitz them, and wherever they go, when they start moving towards your line, you are going to have a profitable blitz. And you're also going to be able to move 3 other strength 4 pieces in there as well. So it is just an horrifically strong defense. Now, when it comes to offense, you are limited by the fact you've only got 3 movement 6 and 3+ pieces. So if your opponent has a bit of a team left when it comes to you trying to score, it's not going to be the easiest. It is not the worst, though. Edge 4+ is fine. Just ask any Ogre coach. You're going to be a little bit slow on offense, but this is one of the most terrifying defenses in Blood Bowl 7s. But on the flip side, you can have a bit of a, well, you can go the speed route instead. So max score, we got 4 Khorne Gors and 3 Marauders. This comes in at a measly 430k. So in most most 7s environments, you're looking at 600k. So you've got 170 to play with. And this is where you can kind of take this roster and season it to your taste. You can take an extra 2-3 Marauders to really go deep on the bench. You can mix in some desperate measures into that as well. You can go 4 Khorne Gor, 4 Marauders for 480, take 2 desperate measures, hope you roll well, an assistant coach to fill it out. And actually, you're leaning into the fact that you've got some Frenzy, you've got Khorne Gors, and you've got, hopefully, a couple of really great desperate measures. Alternatively, this roster can allow you to get 4 Khorne Gors, a Marauder, 3 Marauders, sorry, and that reroll onto the roster. So if you want to have an integral team reroll, you can do it this way. It's only going to leave you with 20k, which means you can't actually do anything else when it comes to swapping a Khorne Gor for a higher strength player. But you can go this route. You've got the Beastman angle, and this is the one where if you want to flex and take some desperate measures and have a bit of fun, this is the starting point. You can also drop 2 Khorne Gors down, use the cash to backfill with a Bloodseeker, so 2 Gors, 1 Seeker, and some desperate measures. This is where you get to the root of you're kind of taking stuff just to take stuff, as opposed because you've got a cohesive plan. But quite frankly, 4 Khorne Gors, 3 Marauders, and a reroll, not bad. 4 Khorne Gors, 4 Marauders, and 2 desperate measures is going to be highly entertaining. And kind of building on that, max Frenzy reroll, 2 Bloodseekers, 5 Marauders, 1 team reroll. Everything you're doing here is Frenzy. This is a worse version of the 4 Seeker roster, but you do have that integral team reroll in there instead. So if you want a little bit more consistency, if you want a little bit of a better opportunity to pick up the ball and have that reroll to do it, you can, without giving up what I consider to be 2 of the best 7s players there. Movement 5, Strength 5, Movement 5, Strength 4, Frenzy is so effective. Now, this roster is likely to destroy itself because it's full-on Frenzy, but you do have that reroll to save you from the both down skull block every now and again. You're giving up 2 points of strength on 2 of your pieces to get that reroll, and that is a really tough balance. This is more consistent, but less killy. But I have to go with the 3-1 mix here, and this is from experience. This is from just loving these pieces. Having that 8th player is so useful. Now, if you want to see Khorne in action, watch 7 Super Series. If you want to see Khorne in action, go back and watch the Sunday coverage of the South Coast Autumn Tournament we did. We had Khorne as a feature on there twice, and they were running the 2 Seekers, 1 Gor, and the big boy roster instead, the 1-2-1 roster. I think the 3-1 mix gives you that better middle ground with a bit of reserve or a desperate measure, but the big guy is a terrifying factor. So it's going to be really down to you whether you want top-end strength or a little bit more consistency. Against most 7s teams, the 3-1 is going to be able to get you there when it comes to having the strength access, and that 8th player is so huge because Khorne, you're going to get someone surfed. You're going to skull yourself out every now and again, and just being able to have that extra assist, that extra bit of reserve for drive 2, for half 2, it's just heartbreaking and soul smashing for your opponent. They're down to 5 players now, and you line up a full squad on the other side. It's absolutely brutal. Khorne are so strong in 7s. They can get outplayed, they can get outrun, but it takes a tough game for them to get outbeaten, and it's so much fun. Anyway, let me know what you think of Khorne in 7s, because I love them. This is great. And Ian Triplo has basically adopted this team for 7s now as well, which is so good. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back soon with more Blood Bowl content. Happy frenzy blocking. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate your support. If you want to support the channel even further, please like and subscribe. It really does help us out. Or come join us on YouTube Members or in Patreon, where you can get exclusive access to some content, some loot, early access to basically everything we do, as well as regular competitions. Or you can pick up some Bonehead Podcast loot either on our website at boneheadpodcast.com. We've got the Dungeon Bowl things, we've got tokens and stuff like that, or on our Spreadshirt site as well. Everything you do just helps us make more content and hopefully do it of better quality. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Happy blocking.